Motivation is the reason most people fail and not succeed.
You're now listening to the Student of Life podcast.
So I see where you're coming from on that, but motivation is what gets people started in the first place. So without motivation, how are you going to actually start if you want to make a change or actually want to do something?
Well, exactly. I mean, starting is good and everything like that, but I really do believe that you need to be disciplined and dedicated to whatever you're doing to actually succeed.
So I so I see that,
Hmm.
but first you have to start with the why. Why am I wanting this? What is it that I want? What's the reason that I want to change or that I want to even begin to do something?
Well, I mean, exactly. And starting isn't the problem, but finishing definitely is. And I want that to really sink in and just think about that one little part really quick. Just let that land.
No, and so for me personally, I see a lot of things when it comes to health, especially. You talking about dieting, you talking about eating right, and being conscious
Hey,
about
hey,
that.
hey, Tim. No, you did not take a moment to let that sink in. You did not take a moment because we have to introduce this show now. That was the cold open. We're done with that. If we're going to go back and forth and debate, let's do that. But everybody else, welcome to the Student of Life, where we're going to break down the real conversations about growth, discipline, and what it actually takes to level up.
Okay, I'm game for this. Let's go.
Are you? Because there's not going to be any fluff, no filters, just real talk here. Are you okay with that?
I'm game. Let's go.
All right. Well, today we're talking about the thing people rely on way too much, in my personal opinion, and I think it's really motivation.
So I agree with you on that. But I also disagree that you need that consistency of the motivation to help you build that discipline because I think it could fluctuate back and forth. I think so. First of all, if I have a goal set, let's say I want to better my physical health,
Hmm.
that encompasses, eating properly, a lot of the lifestyle changes, and just actively doing, what's necessary to just be holistically better overall. I think one of the things that I struggle with is finding one or two things to focus on because I focus on, 10 things at once. And then,
But I think that's where it is. So you're motivated about those 10 things, correct?
yeah.
Let's think about that. Now you have these 10 things that you're super motivated about. And then what happens when you're actively motivated about all these things? What happens
You
typically?
lose you lose focus of the you might gain traction on maybe one or two, but then the rest of them they might fall by the wayside, and that point you might even end up falling off altogether for all of them. So out of the half dozen things that you chose in the beginning to kind of focus on, you know uh, case in point, going through the VA's move program, it's a lot of stuff of uh, small little daily tasks of drinking more water, eating healthier, getting more sleep, exercising, and not even like going and lifting weights, but using the stairs instead of the elevator. And I agree that is a big area that I struggle with, of kind of slipping and falling back when it comes to staying motivated, because oftentimes you're tired, you don't want to do something. And I think it's that ebb and flow when it comes to the motivation. So you get that little snippet of, okay, I'm taking the stairs at work this entire week, I got this. And then something happens, you get a cramp, you injure yourself, you're feeling under the weather, and you're like, okay, I'm going to take the elevator one day, and then the next day you take the elevator, and then it continues back into that pattern.
And then I guess that's in a negative form. You becoming disciplined, going the opposite way. So you were so motivated to take the stairs to get fit and everything like that, and then because it just got too hard, or you gave yourself a little bit too much slack. You know, you know what? I deserve this day off. I deserve to relax a little bit. And let me just take the elevator, just like you said. So it really comes down to, once again, here we go, that discipline is what keeps you in the room. It keeps you, motivated to keep going because why? You're determined to actually hit those goals. I'm just saying.
No, and people do lose sight of, why they started in the first place oftentimes, and then they start drifting. And there might be something that re-engages that thought process. Say, okay, now I know, I remember why I started in the first place. Like I need to go back and start it over again. Or hey, I can pick up where I left off. There wasn't too much, detriment done to my goal or goals, but like people often wait to feel like that, so they never act upon it. So a lot of times it is that kind of self doubt of like, I'll start tomorrow or I'll start the next day. And you do have those uh, constant life stressors, or not even stressors, but the things of holidays.
Yeah.
You're getting
Yeah.
together with family and you've done so well. You've, focused on bettering yourself all over. And next thing a couple pies in front of you and you're like, oh, I'll have one slice. I'm like, "Oh,
But what
I'm
kind of
still a
pie?
little hungry.
What kind of pie though?
And you got pecan, you got pecan, you got pumpkin. It depends on the holiday. It
Wait,
depends on the holiday, bro.
hold on. You pronounce it pecan? I thought it was pecan.
Pecan, you got that the divider belt right there for that. So
So would you really say that motivation is kind of like emotional because it really goes with that ebb and flow and just how you're feeling in the moment. It's kind of like that emotional attachment versus discipline is kind of a decision, a choice that you're making.
yeah, so I think you can have discipline without that motivation. So you can do things, say, yeah, I'm gonna do this, regardless of how I'm feeling, and not have that true discipline or motivation. But I think they feed off of each other as equally as a lot of things.
Okay.
I think you can personally do things and not be disciplined. You can just be, no matter what it is in life, you could choose, one thing, higher education, health, you name it. And things might come easier than other things. So case in point, for me, health and well-being has always been a big struggle for me, but when
Yeah.
it comes to education and higher learning and that type of stuff, I don't really need that discipline. It just kind of comes easily and I can roll with it and, knock things out as they come. So I think it's a big mental struggle when it comes down to it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll definitely give you all of that, right? But here's my question. So what do you do when you don't feel like doing it? Like that thing that you were motivated to do. What is it that you actually do when you just don't feel like doing it?
I think oftentimes, like I said, it's that mental struggle with yourself. It's that, getting into your head and you're like, case in point, big things. I'm not seeing the results as quickly as I would like to with that. So, is this really helping or is it really making the difference that I was hoping for it? And, it's taken a lot of time of realizing, you're not going to see results overnight.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, just like that. You have to continue putting forth the effort. But I think for me personally, I kind of just get into my head and I'm like, I'm not really feeling it. And, you step on the scale and the scale doesn't change. And, then you have to think also, okay, I've chugged a bunch of water. Now that might be some water weight. Or,
Excuses.
yes.
That's
Yeah.
there it is right there. So once again, it comes back to you just do it anyway then. So discipline and determination, you just do it. Just if you're really motivated to accomplish something, which is that motivation, that it's that energy, it's that feeling that I'm motivated, let's do it. And then later in this conversation, in this episode, I'm actually going to give some real life examples of that motivation versus discipline and a determination. But, you just get out there and you do it. So if you only show up when you feel good, you'll never become great. That's just the reality of things. You just don't accomplish things if you just don't show up.
No, I see where you're coming from on that because, you have to realize you can't be dependent on one or the other. You have to it just has to be that self-initiation. And, case in point, you can't rely on someone else to push you or, anything else because at the end of the day, you're doing things for yourself. You may kind of utilize someone else. Okay, I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing
Yeah.
this for, a promotion or any of that. But really at the end of the day, like, you're choosing to do things to better yourself,
Yes.
and you have to be your biggest motivator and your biggest, person to push through.
Hey, it's funny because I think that's your title on the website. But I digress. We're talking about being great here and everything, and the people who win aren't more motivated than others. I really just believe that they are disciplined, and I'm going. I keep using that word discipline because it's that consistency. They show up and they consistently do it. You know, it's not just that they're more motivated; they literally are just consistent about it until it takes hold.
Yeah, and I think for that aspect of work, there are days where I don't wanna go into the office, and there are days where others aren't in the office, but I still show up. I still, put in the hours and oftentimes more hours than I was tending to.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, I'm answering emails at night or on the weekends or doing that type of stuff. So I think it's just really the areas that you focus on. So, like I said, education for me and higher learning,
Mhm.
not a problem. Going to work, doing my job, doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and sometimes going above and beyond. But it's the certain things that are betterment for myself of, just, hey, cutting out simple little things or, hey, getting back on the bike and, taking the stairs again, even though, you might not feel that you're tired, you're sore.
Yeah.
It's it's a lot of just that struggle and that, pull back and forth.
So here we go. That motivation gets you started, but it's unreliable. And that discipline is what carries you when your motivation just like dissipates, because like you said, it's unreliable. You can't depend on that motivation to carry you through all the time. But one thing I do want to say in this full episode that we're going to be having on Patreon, if you're a subscriber, we're going to dive into where we failed personally. And I'm going to actually talk about the discipline that's carried me through some of the times when I have actually won. I don't know what you're going to be talking about because we haven't talked about this ahead of time.
No, sir. But I got some stuff up my sleeve, so it'll be a good conversation.
Oh, speaking of your sleeves, is that a Bengals hoodie?
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for this season.
Okay, okay. Now, are they disciplined enough to go all the way?
Some, not all. It's an Ohio team. Let's be real.
Yeah, right. Hey, but not all Ohio teams are the Bengals. And hey, I'm a lifelong Bengals fan myself. I'm also a huge Buckeyes fan. I do support the Cavs as well too. Shout out to LeBron James. But one thing I will go ahead and say, in the full episode will be available on Patreon, so make sure you go ahead and tap in. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break so that we can go ahead and get prepared for the full episode, also known as the full
Just the
package. Oh no, no, oh no, no! We just did just the tip, but the full package will be on Patreon. So we'll see you soon.
what's on my mind.